There was a moment, and if you're a Xennial parent, born somewhere between the late 70s and mid 80s, you've had this moment where you heard yourself say something to your child and you stopped cold. Not because it was wrong, because it was kind, patient, the kind of thing nobody ever said to you. And for a split second, something in you didn't know what to do with that. That's the thing nobody tells you about parenting the way nobody parented you. It isn't just hard because parenting is hard. It's hard because you're doing something that was never demonstrated to you, giving something you never received, and your nervous system has no roadmap for it. That specific exhaustion has a name, and if you've been carrying it without knowing why, today, that changes. And here's the part that's hardest to admit. Sometimes the exhaustion doesn't come from your child doing anything wrong. It comes from your child doing something completely normal, needing comfort at the end of a day when you've nothing left, asking one more question when your brain is already full, crying over the wrong cup, and you absolutely know that the cup doesn't matter. But every part of you wants to say, just drink from the other one, please, just this once. Or it's the shoes before school, the negotiation that shouldn't be a negotiation, the bedtime that was supposed to take 20 minutes and is now 45, and you're sitting on the edge of their bed in the dark, wondering how you got here. And then the guilt arrives, because they're not being bad, they're being a child, doing exactly what children do. But your nervous system still reacts as though their need is a demand you are failing to meet, as though needing something from you, openly, without apology, is inherently too much. That reaction isn't about your child. It's about the child you were, in a house where need was something you learned to make yourself small enough not to feel. Think about the home you grew up in. Not the worst parts, not the best parts, just the ordinary Tuesday of it. The way feelings moved through the rooms, or didn't. The way you knew, without being told, what was allowed to be said out loud, and what had to stay inside. The way you learned, early, that being fine was the expected answer, that needing something was an inconvenience, that big emotions were something you managed alone, quietly, until they passed. Now think about the home you're trying to build. You want your child to be able to say, I'm scared, without being told to toughen up. You want them to bring you the embarrassing things, the confusing things, the things you had to figure out completely alone at their age. You want them to know, in a way that doesn't require them to guess, that they're loved on their worst days too. You are trying to give them something that was never given to you, something you didn't even have a word for until you were reading about it somewhere. And your chest tightened because you finally had language for an absence you'd been carrying your whole life. That's not a small thing you're doing. That is a complete psychological renovation. You are rebuilding from scratch a model of family that was never shown to you, while living inside it, raising children inside it, and holding down every other demand your life makes on you every single day. Of course you're tired. You're not just parenting. You're constructing the house and living in it at the same time. Here's what makes this specific to your generation. You grew up in a home where the adults around you were doing what they knew. Feelings were managed, not explored. Conflict passed through silence rather than conversation. You learned to read the room instead of speaking into it. You became self-sufficient, not because anyone decided that was good for you, but because that was simply how things worked. Nobody sat with you in the hard moments. Not because they didn't love you, but because nobody had sat with them either. The pattern wasn't a choice, it was an inheritance, and it was passed to you completely because there was nothing available to interrupt it. And then you became a parent, and you decided, quietly, without fanfare, without anyone giving you a framework for what you were taking on, that your child would have something different, that the pattern would stop with you. Psychologists call this intergenerational pattern interruption. The conscious decision to change a learned behavioral cycle before it passes to the next generation. Research shows it is one of the most psychologically demanding things an adult can do. You know the moment. Your child is upset, really upset, and something in you wants to say what was said to you. Stop crying. You're fine. Go to your room until you can calm down. The words are right there, familiar, fast, and for a half second they almost come out, but you don't say them. You take a breath instead. You get down to their level. You say, tell me what happened. You stay in the discomfort of their feelings instead of routing around it. You do the thing nobody did for you. Or it's a school notification on your phone at 7 p.m. Another message, another thing that needs a response, another layer, and your child appears in the doorway, wanting to tell you something about their day. Something that, in the grand ledger of important things, doesn't register. But you put the phone face down. You turn toward them. You listen like it matters. Because to them, it does. And you remember being the child whose stories landed in an empty room. And afterward, when the child is settled and you're alone, in the kitchen or the car or sitting on the edge of your bed, something in you feels simultaneously proud and quietly hollowed out. Proud because you held it. Hollowed out because somewhere underneath, a younger version of you noticed that someone finally showed up the way you needed. And it wasn't for you. It was through you for your child. That specific ache has a name. Researchers call it reparenting grief, the emotional cost of giving your child an experience that simultaneously reminds you of what you didn't receive. It isn't resentment. It is a quiet mourning for the version of you that needed exactly what you just gave to someone else. There's one more thing this kind of parenting requires that almost nobody talks about: repair. When you lose your patience, and you will, because all parents do, you have to go back. You have to knock on the door and say, I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. I was frustrated and I took it out on you, and that wasn't fair. You have to model accountability in a way that probably nobody ever modeled for you. So now, when your child looks at you after a hard moment, expecting something, though they couldn't name what, you have to reach for a skill you were never taught. You have to find the words for an apology that isn't an erasure of your authority, but an acknowledgement of your humanity. You have to show your child that the relationship is bigger than the rupture. That's not a personality trait. That is an extraordinary amount of invisible work. Here's what I want you to hear clearly. The exhaustion isn't a sign that you're failing. It is the most precise possible measure of how hard you're working. There'll be days the old pattern wins. Days you say the thing you swore you wouldn't say. Days you shut down when you meant to stay open, or lose patience when you needed to stay calm. That isn't evidence that you can't do this. That is evidence that you are human, attempting something that requires consistent effort across thousands of moments without a net. What matters isn't the moments you got wrong. What matters is the direction you keep returning to. And your direction has been clear since the moment you decided your child wouldn't have to figure out alone what you had to figure out alone. That decision is already changing something. Not loudly, not all at once, but it is changing things in ways your child will carry long after they've forgotten the specific Tuesday it happened on. The chain breaks with you. That isn't a small thing. That's everything. That's the hardest work you'll ever do, and you're doing it. If this named something you've been carrying, drop it in the comments. I read them all. The next 2 videos are already waiting for you on screen. But before you go, take a breath. What you just watched yourself do, simply by staying until the end of this video, that's the same thing you do for your child every single day. You show up, you stay present. You don't leave when it gets heavy. That's not nothing, that's everything. As always, you matter.